Gosh, I'm reminded that the word for spirit in the ancient languages also means breath. And the flute, being a wind instrument, takes breath and transforms it into something so beautiful. And maybe if we listen to that flute music, we can hear the Spirit speaking to us through that sound. Anyway, thank you, Holly. For our scripture today, the lectionary it does this sometimes. It kind of jumps back and forth a little bit. Epiphany, which I already mentioned, is coming up at the end of this Christmas season. And we will focus on that scripture next week. It's the day that the Magi arrive and present their gifts to Jesus. But today's scripture actually comes right after that in Matthew's gospel. So the scripture is from Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. And the scripture begins with the words, after they had left, meaning after the Magi had left. After they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up and took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." Well, I'm going to start by doing my own little bit of jumping around. In Matthew chapter 1, the very beginning of Matthew's gospel, we have the story of Jesus' birth. And the main characters in chapter 1 are Mary, Joseph, an angel, and then in the very last verse, Jesus is born. Then chapter 2, at the beginning of chapter 2, some new characters are introduced, and the first is King Herod. Chapter 2 begins in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. King Herod was a ruler who was described as cruel and stern and brutish, a man with a tremendous ego who built the temple in Jerusalem, one of the great wonders of the world, not to honor God, but to demonstrate his own importance. Historical records indicate that Herod called himself a Jew, but that he didn't really follow Jewish practices. Herod portrayed himself as a Jew as a way to fortify his own power among the Jewish people. He wanted people to think he was faithful, that he worshiped the same God they did, because then it would be easier for him to control and manipulate them. He would use Jewish scriptures to claim authority for himself, but he neglected the teachings of the law and the prophets. And in fact, he even did the exact opposite. He flaunted his wealth. He ignored the poor. He built elaborate palaces of white marble and gold with enormous banquet halls for entertaining and impressing, all while the people struggled just to survive. All this masked his deep insecurity and his fear of losing power. He was quick to strike back at those who challenged him, and even executed several members of his own family, including his wife, when he felt threatened by them. Nevertheless, among the elite classes, men jockeyed to be near Herod, to ingratiate themselves to him, in the hopes that they could share in at least a little bit of the power and the glory that he had. Even in the temple, the high priests, those at the very top of the hierarchy of religious leaders, they neglected Scripture's call to pursue justice and care for the poor, and instead focused their attention and their praise upon Herod. It was corruption at the highest levels of government and religion. So it was no surprise when Herod began a search for Jesus, the one who many said was a new king of the Jews. Herod felt threatened by all this talk of a new king. Scripture even says that Herod was frightened by all this. So Herod began a search for this new king, this child born to Mary and Joseph. He was obsessed with ending this child's life before he had a chance to grow up and challenge him and his power. First, Herod called some of those chief priests to him to consult with them. He wanted to find Jesus and kill Jesus, and he wanted their help. And those chief priests, along with their scribes, did help Herod because they didn't want to risk upsetting him. They ignored their own teachings to help this corrupt, evil man. Yet Herod still couldn't find Jesus. He couldn't find Jesus because, well, he was led down a wrong path by those magi who we will hear more about next week. Those magi are the faithful heroes of this story, even though they were foreigners from another land and worshipers of different religions. It's ironic. They are the ones who stood for justice, the ones who did what they could to protect the innocent baby Jesus. The heroes of this story, despite not being Jews themselves. So Herod expanded his wrath. He ordered that every baby boy in and around Bethlehem be killed. It was a terrible order. It was evil. Yet because he was Herod, he could get away with it. He could get away with committing evil atrocities because he had all the power. We may not like that Herod is a part of the Christmas story. We may want to turn our attention away from the massacre of all those innocent baby boys. We may want to deny that these top-level religious leaders were ever complicit with Herod and the evil he committed. I mean, we don't sing Christmas carols about this part of the story. But the Bible does not hide these things from view, not even in the story of Jesus' birth. The hope, peace, joy, and love of Christmas take place in the midst of a world of oppression and corruption and violence. The Bible wants us to remember that. It all takes place in the midst of a world where human rights are trampled upon, a world where the poor are denied justice and mercy. That is a part of the Christmas story. And we need to hear that part of the Christmas story. And we need to tell that part of the Christmas story. Because we also live in a world of oppression and corruption and violence. A world where human rights are trampled upon and where the poor are denied justice and mercy. As we heard in today's scripture reading, an angel appeared to Joseph, instructing him to flee, along with Mary and Jesus, to save Jesus' life by taking him beyond the reach of Herod. So Joseph and Mary and Jesus become refugees fleeing the danger of their homeland. Like many refugees and immigrants, they took only what they could carry. Scripture doesn't say what life was like for them in Egypt, but I wonder, could they speak the language? Was Joseph able to find employment? Was Mary included in the conversations that women had at the marketplace or at the well where they fetched water for drinking and cleaning and where they caught up on gossip? Was she offered any advice or support to help her with the challenges of child rearing? What was the attitude of the Egyptian people and the Egyptian authorities towards refugees like Mary and Joseph and Jesus? Did they even practice, the Egyptians, did they even practice the same level of hospitality that Jews were instructed to practice in regards to immigrants, foreigners from another land? I imagine that the Egyptian religion did also teach the importance of hospitality, as most religions then did and still do today. But as we know, what the religions teach and how the people act aren't always the same. Nevertheless, Egypt was a safer place for Joseph and Mary and Jesus than their homeland, and that is what matters most of all. There are many ways to connect this 2,000-year-old Bible story to experiences and situations today. The one that most clearly comes to mind is the treatment of immigrants and refugees. The Bible repeatedly calls us to show hospitality, to welcome them, to treat them as if they were citizens. In the Bible, we see good examples of that, like the way Boaz showed kindness to Ruth. But we also see bad, even horrific examples of those who treated foreigners poorly, as in the city of Sodom. And we would do well to remember that even Jesus and his family were, for a while, refugees. It's a shame that the issue of immigration, like so many other issues, has become a weapon in the hands of political parties. As a result, our policies are neither fair in how they are written nor fair in how they are implemented. I think what we lack is compassion and love for one's neighbor. Just like in ancient times, it's about power and control. Meanwhile, the Josephs, Marys, and Jesuses of our time face incredible hardships and challenges as they seek a safe and secure place to live. Even after Jesus' family returned and settled back in Nazareth, they faced many of the same struggles that immigrants today face. Jesus and his family were Jews, but they were also Galileans. And Galilean Jews were not fully accepted by the Jews in Jerusalem, the center of the Jewish religion. Those in places like Galilee were considered lesser Jews, or not real Jews. There was a little too much Roman or Greek influence in the way they practiced their Jewish faith. But they also, of course, weren't fully Roman or Greek. And because they were Jews, they weren't fully accepted into Roman or Greek culture. Neither here nor there did they find a full welcome, which is the experience of many today. California, where I'm from, used to be part of Mexico, along with a number of other Southwest states. And some Mexican-American families there go back many generations. They are not immigrants, yet they are often treated as if they were. I've heard some of them defend their right to live here by saying that they never crossed the border to come into the United States. The border crossed them. Yet because of their culture and their ethnicity, they aren't always fully accepted into American society. Sometimes they're even told to go back home, even though there's no other home for them to go back to. Their home has always been here. And just like Jesus, the Galilean Jew, they aren't fully accepted anywhere, neither here nor there, even though they aren't technically immigrants at all. Many who are immigrants in California or here in Illinois or anywhere else have recently come to the United States, but the Bible does not allow us to use that as an excuse to withhold hospitality. Jesus himself said, "Whoever welcomes the stranger, the foreigner, welcomes me. Whoever does not welcome the stranger, the foreigner, does not welcome me." At the very least, then, immigrants should be granted safety, compassion, and immigration policies that are fair and fairly enforced. And all who follow Jesus are called to practice these things, because how we treat them is how we treat Jesus. For the good news of Christ and the good news of Christmas is especially meant to be good news for them and for all people like them, for all those who are vulnerable or poor or oppressed or in need of mercy. There is no doubt that God's attention, God's mercy and compassion are especially focused on those who are the most vulnerable in society. Vulnerable just like Jesus was when his family took him into hiding in Egypt to escape Herod's wrath. The love we practice must do the same. We must act mercifully and compassionately to all those who are vulnerable in our world today, all those who are frightened, all those who are seeking safety, security, or wholeness. Because in our world today, Herod is alive and well. Oppression and corruption are alive and well. Hatred of one's neighbor is alive and well. Yet the gospel has the power to overcome all that. With the limitless love of God, the love that God offers to all through Jesus. He is the Prince of Peace, the King born in a manger, whose reign of love has long outlasted the reign of Herod, and which will outlast the reign of every oppressive ruler, for his reign is forever. And the whole world will be redeemed and restored to wholeness, filled with the hope, peace, joy, and love of Christ.